Hello, everyone. From the beautiful city of Tucson, Arizona, this is Kalpana Pandit. In our web series, which is a very inspiring series, in my opinion, called Centenarians, Beacons in the Fog of Time, I have the honor and privilege today to interview and talk with an amazing centenarian friend and her beautiful daughter. Both of them are here from Florida to speak with us. Her name is Sylvia Rose Soloway, and her daughter, Shelley Soloway Nisberg. Both of them are here with us. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm honored to be interviewed by such a beautiful lady.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here, Shelley.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. Well, there's so much we can talk about, but I really would love to know a little more about Sylvia's growing up years. Sylvia was born in Brooklyn, New York on November 22nd, 1916, and has led an incredible life so far and continues to be active and wonderful. And Sylvia, first of all, would you tell our viewers about memories from your growing up years?
Well, when I was 15 years, I entered Tilden High School, which is in Brooklyn, and I met my husband, Charles, who became the love of my life, and we were married for 72 years.
That is amazing.
And I had two beautiful children. Shelley, my daughter, was born 5 years after we were married. And my son was born 10 years after, because Shelley was born 10 years after Shelley was born. I waited 10 years to have another child because Shelley was a handful. She was
So during that whole time, I mean, obviously you've been very active and healthy, and did you have a particular type of food that you would recommend to?
all the time. I did not make much fried foods. Our mainstay was fish and chicken.
Mm-hmm.
That was the mainstay. Very little meat did we eat at that time, and nothing fried, cooked or baked. That was really the mainstay of our existence. Also, since I was the eldest in the family, I made all the dinners for all the holidays, and all the family came to my home.
Oh, wow. So how did that healthy lifestyle for eating happen so early for you? Because as you see today, it's so hard to get children to eat healthy. So how did that happen? Was it from your own family?
For one thing, I don't think we had all those fast food places that you go now, and women. I think women are more lazy about cooking.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the mainstay of my meals at home.
Mm-hmm. And mostly home cooking.
Mostly home cooking. It had to be a birthday or a special holiday if we go out to eat. It wasn't like now, where we have 5 meals a day, 5 meals a week out.
Exactly. Yeah, so that was one aspect of life with healthy eating. What about your exercise or fitness, or what did you follow?
I was a walker.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get up in the morning and go with two of my other neighbors. We lived right near a park, and before we had breakfast, we would walk around the park, which was 20 blocks. Mm-hmm. We would do that every single day. Then we go up and have our breakfast meal.
But that was when you were much older.
That was when I was much older.
After you were like 70.
Yeah.
And I do remember in your granddaughter's birthday party, I think you were dancing. This was like a couple years ago.
At Andrew's birthday party.
Yes, a little.
And that was very inspiring for me to watch. As was Shelley, she was dancing too. I know for you family is very important, very, very important. So can you tell us a few of your fun and favorite memories that come to mind that you would like to share with our audiences? Just in general, whatever you think.
I'm just trying to think. First of all, when Shelley was born, that was the most exciting part of my life. I had a daughter, and I know, besides being my daughter, she's my best friend. And the fact that we live close together, I'm a block away from you.
More than a block.
Walking distance away from one another. I live alone. I take care of myself. I wear a medical alert in case I get into any problems at home. And right now, in my my latest years, Shelley and I are taking Hebrew lessons.
Oh wow!
And I cannot really tell you how excited I was about learning a foreign language, especially one that relates to my religion. So we've been doing very well with our studies.
And you're still in classes, you're learning still. Oh my goodness, that is outstanding. What
The oldest one there.
wow.
The other women range about from 60 up.
About 60 to 75.
And it's an ongoing thing, right? There's so much to learn. Right?
Yes, there's so much to learn, and then of course, when Shelley got married, that was one of the most beautiful weddings and experiences a mother could see. And my son-in-law was very much like my husband, loving. He never greeted you with a handshake. It was always with a hug.
I think the warmth of family, the true love of family is so important for...
It was just wonderful. And they moved, we lived in Brooklyn, and Shelley finally moved to Long Island, and we would go there visiting, every other week or so. My son-in-law would call many times and say, "Mom, what's the matter? You don't love us anymore? We haven't seen you for 2 weeks already." And that was our relations all through the years. Unfortunately, my son-in-law died at a very early age. He was a heavy smoker, and he died from lung cancer. So that left a vacuum in our lives. And I used to give piano lessons. I was a piano teacher. And Shelley played very, very well. She played beautifully. When my son was growing up, I said, "Kerry, how about starting piano lessons?" He said, "Oh, no, thank you." I said, and then I realized that Shelley was playing so beautifully that he felt she would be too much competition for him. So I said, "Okay, what would you like to learn? What instrument?" He said, "I'd like to learn the guitar." I said, "Fine, we'll get you a guitar." We got my son a guitar. We got a guitar lesson.
And I guess that means it's so important to nurture a young person's talent, right? And help them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to think of other things that were important to mention. Well, every one of the births of my grandchildren, and of course my.
If I may ask, how many grandchildren do you have?
I have Carrie, Andrea, and Alan, and Tracy, and James, and Genevieve.
That's it.
And that's it. 5.
And Andrea's a wonderful friend of ours, and that's how we met you. So thankful to the whole family. Yeah. So Shelley, what are your memories of your mom? Some fun memories that you'd like to share, maybe with the audiences. You've been with.
She was always the nurturer.
And
To the whole
caregiver.
caregiver to the whole family. If my aunts got sick, if my cousins got sick, she was right there. She was always there for everybody, and that was just her nature. When Andrea was born, we lived in a 2-family house, and my mother was down every day making sure I was taking good care of her.
I think that nurturing spirit, it just keeps you going, and just, right? I mean, the fact that you love people, maybe, and right? That's so beautiful. I sense that in people who are always healthy and strong. I sense that love of other people.
Yes.
That's so beautiful. I'm sure you've been through difficulties, surmounted a lot of difficulties in your life so far. Is there something which you want to share as to how you've dealt with, maybe you don't have to tell us what they are necessarily, but how have you dealt with most of the difficult stresses in your life, just to, help other people?
When looking back, I really cannot think of anything that was really that difficult for me during my growing up years and my marriage.
Maybe your attitude, because that's beautiful. It's a great attitude.
I really cannot think of anything. My husband did a lot of traveling. He was a salesman, and when he first got the job, he was gone for 3 weeks at a time, and that was very difficult. Although I lived in the same house, it was a 2-family house. My mother and father lived downstairs, and we lived upstairs. Mm-hmm. So I always had my mother with me. My husband and I wanted a night out or something, my mother was right there taking care of the children. Mm-hmm. So it was a learning thing for me also, because my mother was also so helpful and loving all the time. Mm-hmm. I really can't think of anything that stressful. It was hard when my husband was away for 3 weeks at a time, but he worked for a very wonderful man who said, "Don't worry, eventually I will pull your
to get you'll be closer to home.
Mm-hmm. And you won't have to be away for 3 weeks at a time." And at the end, he was only away for a week at a time. So
at
that
the
was.
end, he wasn't away at all.
A week at a time, and then he would he walk when he was local, yeah. Right? So that was really all the really stressful things I can think of.
Wow, I think
when my father was young when he died, he had a cerebral hemorrhage, and that was a very difficult time for my mother and I. My father and mother had a retail curtain and drapery store, which was a block away from where we lived. So my mother and father went into the store 9 o'clock in the morning and left at 9 o'clock at night. They had a long day. They worked 7 days a week, and it was hard for them. And then, of course, when my father died, we were so fortunate that we lived upstairs, my mother lived downstairs, and we always could take care of Mom. Mm-hmm. So that
And then you went to the store every day after
I would,
Grandpa died.
yes, after my father died, I went to the store every day with Shelley in the carriage.
No, Carrie was in
Carried
the
the
carriage. I was
carriage,
in
my
school.
son in the carriage, and I would stay with my mother and help her until finally she had to give the store up. She couldn't continue anymore. So that was really, I think, the hardest part of my life.
What are some tips you'd give to the young people of today to live well and to, so that they can just have a great life and kind of try and avoid some of the modern life pitfalls that are there?
You have to care about people, and you have to love to be with people. That's very important. Don't isolate yourself from people. Don't isolate yourself from your family, and make every holiday a family gathering, so that you're not away from one another. And if you're far away from one another, we had cousins in California that we visited once a year, and they visited us once a year. So that gave me a chance. My husband was always traveling, so he wasn't anxious to travel, but he loved these people, and we were able to go once a year to California, and they would come to New York once a year.
So you make the extra effort to do that, right?
Yes, yes, and it was a wonderful, wonderful relationship. And then we were able to do some of the things in California that we couldn't do in New York. So that was a wonderful. As a matter of fact, they called us and they said, "We are going to Israel. We would like you to join us." And I said, "Oh, that's wonderful. I would love to go." My husband said, "Look, I travel so much I don't want to travel anymore." I said, "But Israel is a special place." And so we went to Israel, and we had a wonderful time there. When we went to Israel, the rabbi the synagogue that I used to attend to said, my son and daughter-in-law, my daughter and son-in-law are living and his son was a rabbi. He said they are living in Netanya, and when you go there, don't forget to call them. When we got to Israel, we called them, and they took us all over. And they took us to the Diamond Center. In the Diamond Center, you have all very Orthodox religious men taking rocks and chipping away and making diamonds. It was a very, very, very interesting experience. And that was one of the great things that we did. And then, of course, we would go to outings with the family to different, during the summer, to different hotels in the mountains.
So I think they have a very cute story about a family little secret, which I get to be privy to. So Sylvia, can you tell us about this little...
I was in a candy shop one day, and bought some few things, and opened my wallet to pay. And in my wallet, I have a picture of my husband. And the woman looks at my wallet and she said, "Oh, I know this man." I says, "How do you know him?" She says, "He comes in here every Friday and buys a halal bar, and it says, 'Do you mind if I eat it here? Because I don't want my wife to know that I'm eating it. She'll be very upset with me.'" And she said, "No, finish your halal bar, and Mama's the word."
So every week he had his chocolate bar, and you never knew about it.
No.
For a long time, right?
For a very, very long time. And that was one of the secrets that my husband had from me.
I think it's really a cute story, so I thought it'd be so fun to share it.
You didn't tell her anything about Carrie and Margaret and the kids?
Yes. When my son went to college, he met my daughter-in-law, and he came to visit us, and he said, "This is the lady I'm dating." I says, "If you're in love with her and you want to marry her, that's fine with me." And so they were married, and I have three grandchildren, and the oldest granddaughter has 3 of her own. So I have 3 great-grandchildren, and from Andrea, I have 2 great-grandchildren. So we're
Alan,
very...
you have 2 more.
What?
Alan, you have 2 more.
And my grandson, Shelley's son, we have 2 more. Alan called you, and he said, when he met his wife, he said, "Mom, this is the girl he met her, he dated her maybe 2 times. He said, "Mom, this is the girl I'm going to marry." And we were lucky. My granddaughter is such a wonderful, warm person. Not only that, she's the best cook, she's the best baker. Unbelievable.
Did she learn the cooking and baking from you?
No.
No, this is my son's wife she's talking about.
okay.
No. And whenever we have an occasion, it's always in her father's house, because her father has a dining room table that seats 20 people, and she's a wonderful hostess, my granddaughter. And when we come there, when we do very often, because the grandchildren are always having special things that we don't want to miss. And we're only 4 hours away from them, so we don't have to fly, we just drive. Shelley does the driving.
So you still travel quite a bit.
Yes, yes we do. And another thing is that Shelley's friends have all made me very welcome. She does a lot culturally with them. The ballet, the opera, concerts, and I always say, "Oh, the schlepp-along is here," meaning me, and they say, "Sylvia, you're not a schlepp-along, you're one of the girls."
Absolutely.
So I've been very, very fortunate that way. My mother always said to me, "Never go to bed angry. Always make sure that you go to bed with a happy mind. So if something is troubling you, talk it out with your husband." And
such brilliant advice, and it's hard to do, but I think that has helped you a lot as well.
yes, and I always remember what my mother said to me. And my mother was also a very loving woman. She loved her family. Came to America when she was 15 years old.
From where?
Lithuania.
Okay.
And she went to live with an aunt, because in those days you had somebody had to sponsor you before you could come to the United States. And My mother was here a week, and her aunt said to her, "You have to go to the Hayas." Hayas was a Hebrew educational society. You must learn to speak English, because if you don't, you cannot function here. And that's what she did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the knowledge of learning has always been through my mother. She was always such a remarkable, and even my mother was, Grandma was what, 93 when she died, and she was always studying and learning.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I've had a wonderful background.
Yeah. And I think, and you're also continuing that with your love of family and to
Yes.
your children and grandchildren. Yes. So if there's one thing you would say that has, I know you told me about this amazing principle of loving people. If there's one other thing you can tell, what keeps you going, what keeps you pushing forward, what would you say?
My knowledge of learning. I only want to keep learning. When I started to learn Hebrew, I was in heaven. I really thought, oh my goodness, there's so much knowledge coming to me. My knowledge of learning. Mm-hmm. That's one of the basic things I always wanted to learn.
Wow. This is so fascinating to know that her love of learning just continues every day, and that keeps you fresh and going forward, and that's amazing.
And ironically enough, my grandmother had the same feeling. And when I was growing up, I always remember her saying to me, if I'm not pronouncing something right, I want you to correct me. And she wrote every day. She wrote stories, she wrote letters. She was always practicing her writing, her reading,
and her learning, her reading, right?
Yeah.
And always, please correct me if I'm not pronouncing it. Please correct me.
Oh my gosh, this is so amazing to know. So Sylvia, I also, like I told you, I watched you dancing in Andrea's birthday party, which was amazing. And I guess you've had a long time love of dancing, right? Can you tell me about that?
Oh, my husband was not a dancer. I was lucky if we would get up and waltz, give me a waltz, and that was it.
Oh, he used to waltz with you?
That was the only thing to do.
But that's not bad. I mean, the guy waltzing is awesome, right?
Yeah, well, we would do 3 or 4 steps, and he would sit down. He says, "Go get yourself a partner." But
you loved dancing.
I love dancing, yes, and we did a lot of line dancing, folk dancing. That's what I did mostly, because if my husband didn't want to dance with me, I wasn't going to go dancing with another man. And our summers were spent at a lake. We had rented bungalows, which was wonderful for the kids because they had summer camp there.
Okay, so Sylvia wants to say something about
My great-granddaughter Allison. My great-granddaughter Allison played in a musical show called Annie Jr. It was a takeoff of Annie, the show Annie, and they put her on a red-headed wig, which was just wonderful. She looked the picture of Annie on Broadway. My granddaughter, my great-granddaughter has a beautiful voice and sings magnificently. Not only does she sing well, but she acts beautifully. Her facial expressions are something to be seen. So I had to mention this wonderful show. Not only did we see it once, but we saw it 3 times.
Really?
And every time we saw it, it was better than the first. When she first went on the first night, I said, Allison, break a leg. And I don't mean literally. The second time I saw the show, I say, Allison, you broke 2 legs.
Well, I hope Allison's career just soars, musical career, acting career, right? That's what you're... Yeah.
She is such an incredible child. Wonderful, wonderful, magnificent voice. And I am very, very proud of her. I could mention one other thing of my great-grandson, Mark, her brother. He has such a wonderful knowledge of what's going on in the world. Any picture that goes on television, he'll tell you who the person is, who the senator, if it's a senator, if he's a representative, whatever he is doing in politics, he will tell you all about it. And I said to Mark, I said, you should think of going into politics because you're so knowledgeable of what's going on that you would be an asset to any thing that you want to do. So think about it. My son is a videotape editor now.
Oh.
He is the only person that I know that gets up in the morning, gung-ho, anxious to go to work.
He loves what he does.
Loves what he does. He said, Mom, they give me hours and hours and hours of footage. He says, and I have to put it into a half-hour slot, or an hour slot, or a 2-hour slot. And I love it. He says, and if they make me retire at some time, I'm going to come into the office free of charge and work there for nothing.
Gosh, that's the ideal dream of most people, to work, and for them it's not work, it's a joy.
He goes to work joyously. My daughter-in-law is into holistic methods. So she believes in a lot of hands-on things. I always say to Shelley, Margaret's doing her hocus pocus again. But it works. It works. So she's a wonderful, wonderful lady. I love her dearly. And I have wonderful grandchildren and great-grandchildren. My youngest grandchild is 5 months, 6 months?
Great-grandchild.
Great-grandchild. She's 6 months old. And they name her Charlotte. She's named after my husband, who was Charlie. And they don't call her Charlotte, they call her Charlie.
Oh.
My oldest grandchild, Carrie, has a farm, a 40-acre farm. She raises chickens, and she has the most fabulous vegetable garden you could ever see. When other people put boxes of candy on their table, and as they go by, they'll take a candy. She has an assortment of tomatoes which you don't see anywhere else. All different colors, all different sizes, and when you walk into the kitchen, you take one tomato, plunk it in your mouth like candy.
So much healthier.
Yes, yes. So, and of course, she hopes to make a living out of the chickens, and hopefully she will.
Yes, it's and the vegetable garden sounds amazing. I love veggies. So.
Yes, it really is. It really is wonderful. My second, her brother, who was a few years younger, graduated high school, and so I said to him, James, how would you like to be a piano tuner? I said, piano tuners do very well now. Years ago, they used to tune a piano with a tuning fork, but now they use a computer. And he said, gee, he thinks that's a good idea. I said, contact one of the big piano companies, and I'm sure they have a program where they teach young people how to become tuners. And he contacted one of the companies, and he got an apprenticeship there. And he came to Shelley one day, and he said, Aunt Shelley, here's my certification. I'm going to tune your piano. So she said, okay. She's in the kitchen making dinner, and an hour or two later, she goes into the living room, and all the keys are on the floor.
Oh my!
The hammer and
everything. I panicked.
You've taken it apart.
Everything.
And she said, James, do you know what you're doing? He says, don't worry, Shelley, I know what I'm doing. And he put the whole thing back together, and it played beautifully. So he has a wonderful career now. And not only does he do the inside of the piano, but he'll take the whole outside.
He does it
And if
beautiful.
you have an ebony piano and you want a white piano, he'll refurnish it. My youngest granddaughter, his sister, works for a college in the legal department where they give loans for students, and she has a wonderful job there. And so pretty much everybody is set, and I'm happy.
Wow, it just sounds like so well-rounded and something that everybody should aspire for, and I'm just very honored to have the opportunity to speak with you and know more about your life and your family. And thank you, Sylvia. It's just such a pleasure, and thank you so much, Shelley. It's an honor. So thank you, everyone, and I hope all of you will watch this interview and understand the inspiring principles behind her life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.